What if the same verdict that saved K-Flock is the exact thing that could bury him for the rest of his life? Because right now, the internet is on fire with a wave of viral posts claiming he beat the biggest charge in his case. Yet prosecutors are still pushing for a jaw-dropping 50 years. And people are asking one question that won't go away. How do you win the top count and still lose your whole future? Now, to be clear, we're talking about what's being reported and what's circulating online, not declaring anything as absolute fact. But the chatter is loud, and it's messy. Some sources say the courtroom energy shifted the moment that verdict landed, like everyone realized the story wasn't ending there. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and suddenly the conversation flipped from "he got a break" to "they're trying to make an example out of him." And then came the part that has everyone arguing in circles, the idea that one post, one reaction, one moment of celebration could be used to paint him as reckless, ruthless, and unremorseful. If that's true, this isn't just a legal battle anymore, it's a public war. The first thing you have to understand is how fast the story flipped in the public eye, because one minute the timeline was acting like K-Flock just caught the biggest break of his life, and the next minute people were saying the system was about to hit him with a number so heavy it felt unreal. And all of this is being talked about like it is a plot twist nobody saw coming. Not because the case suddenly changed, but because the way people are reacting has turned it into a full-blown culture moment, where every detail is getting pulled apart, replayed, and argued over like a reality show reunion. According to the talk making rounds online, the mood inside that courtroom was strange. Not just tense, but sharp, like everyone could feel there was more happening under the surface than what was being said out loud. You had supporters sitting stiff, eyes locked forward, like they were trying to hold their breath and their opinions at the same time. You had people on the other side looking like they had already decided what kind of ending they wanted. And in the middle of that, K-Flock was being described as unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that can be read two ways. Either you are locked in and focused, or you are trying not to show what you feel because you know everyone is watching. Then the online chatter swears the moment the top count was beaten, it wasn't just relief that hit the room, it was confusion. Because for a lot of fans, beating that count sounds like the whole thing should soften, like the pressure should lift. But what people claim happened next is the opposite. The conversation immediately shifted to sentencing, to numbers, to recommendations, to how the government can still push for decades even if the headline charge did not stick. And that is where the drama starts, because now you have two different narratives colliding at the same time. One narrative is the fan narrative. The fans are shocked because they are saying this proves something. They are saying it proves the situation was complicated, that the story is not as simple as people wanted it to be, that there was enough doubt for a jury to say no on the biggest accusation, and they're running with it. You could see it in the comments, in the reposts, in the way people started typing like they were speaking directly to the screen. They tried to bury him. He stood tall. They wanted life, but he beat it. It turned into celebration, and not the quiet kind either, the kind where people start acting like they were in the room even though they were watching from a phone. But the other narrative is what people say is coming from prosecutors and court watchers, and it sounds colder, like a calculation. The idea being pushed around online is that beating one count does not erase the rest, and that the remaining convictions still carry serious time. And then comes the line that makes everybody argue, the reported push for 50 years. That number hit like a slap because it sounds like a lifetime without using the word life. And once that number started circulating, the fan celebration turned into anger because suddenly it felt like the victory was being taken back in real time. And that anger had a target, not just the prosecutors, but also anyone seen as switching up. Because once the sentencing talk got loud, some of the same accounts that were cheering started posting clips and screenshots trying to prove a different point, that K-Flock should have handled everything differently after the verdict, that he should have stayed calm, stayed silent, stayed off social media, stayed invisible. And this is where the internet turned into a courtroom of its own, with fans cross-examining each other like they were sworn in. One person posts, "He beat the top count, why are they still coming at him like this?" Another replies, "Because he still got convicted on other things." Someone else jumps in, "They just hate drill." Then another says, "Nah, you can't play tough online when you're still in their hands." And the thread keeps growing, emotions ran high, and the fan base that was supposed to be united starts splitting into camps. One camp is defending every move like it is strategy. The other camp is criticizing like it is self-sabotage.
And right in the middle of that split, the biggest rumor starts spreading, that a post after the verdict, allegedly celebratory and reckless, is being used against him. People online keep repeating the same idea, that prosecutors are treating it like proof of attitude, proof of no remorse, proof that he is still stuck in the same mindset they were accusing him of. Now again, we're talking about what is being said and reported, not stamping anything as absolute. But the way the timeline is reacting, you would think that one post became the main character of the story overnight. You had fans saying, "They are twisting words." You had others saying, "Bro, why would you post anything?" You had people claiming family members were stressed out because they knew the smallest thing can be flipped in court. And then you had the clout hunters pretending they had inside information, saying stuff like, "I told y'all he should have listened," or "I heard the judge wasn't feeling that." And once those kinds of posts enter the chat, the whole situation turns into a mess of whispers. And the whispers do not stop at fans, because when a case gets this much attention, everyone around the artist becomes part of the story, whether they want to or not. You start seeing people named as close friends and family sources and someone from the circle, all saying different versions of the same thing. One version says the family is praying and trying to keep it together privately. Another version claims the family is furious at the people around him who were supposed to protect him from himself. Another says there are arguments behind the scenes about who is really loyal and who is just around for attention. And it is not hard to see why, because when the stakes are that high, every relationship turns into a pressure test. If the internet is to be believed, you have at least one person in the circle who is telling him to stay focused, stay respectful, play it smart, and let the lawyers do the talking. And you have at least one other voice saying, you can't look weak, you can't let them control the narrative, you have to show confidence. And that mix right there is how people end up making decisions that feel good in the moment and cost them later. So now the story becomes bigger than the case. It becomes about image, about pride, about whether the system punishes you only for what you did or also for how you act afterward. And the reason people are locked in is because they feel like they have seen this movie before, where a young artist rises
fast, gets caught in something heavy, and the smallest choices become magnified until they feel like fate. Then the internet started dragging in everybody for comparison. People brought up other famous trials, other rappers, other situations where lyrics and posts were used to paint a picture. And the comments got heated, because some people see it as accountability, while others see it as targeting. And when you have that kind of divide, the conversation stops being about one person and turns into a fight about culture, about fairness, about who gets judged and how. Meanwhile, the reports floating around keep emphasizing the date, like the date itself is part of the drama, because the timeline is saying the sentencing is set on an anniversary connected to the original incident, and fans are reading symbolism into it, like it is being done on purpose to make a point. And whether that is true or not, the feeling it creates is real. It makes people feel like the story is being framed, like the moment is being staged, like the outcome is already leaning a certain way. And this is where you start seeing the emotional stakes spike, because it is not just how many years, it is what kind of future. Fans are posting edits of old songs, old clips, old interviews, writing captions like, "He was just a kid. Look how fast it went left. This could have been different." And then you have the other side responding with their own posts saying, "Actions have consequences. Stop glorifying. Think about the victim's family." And the comment sections turn into battlegrounds where nobody is really listening. They're just trying to win. So in this first stretch of the story, what you really have is a collision of celebrations and fear. A victory that did not feel like a victory for long. A fan base that is loud but divided. A family that is being talked about like they are carrying a weight nobody can see. And an artist at the center of it all, who, according to the way people describe it, is learning in real time that beating the top count does not end the storm. It just changes the direction of the wind. And by the time the night cooled down and the posts stopped refreshing every second, one thing was clear. The biggest fight was no longer only in court. It was in the narrative. Because the next morning, the paperwork everyone ignored became the loudest thing in the room. The paperwork everyone ignored became the loudest thing in the room. Because once the celebration clips stopped looping, people started reading between the lines of what was being reported. And that's when the mood shifted from "he got a break" to "hold up, they're still coming with a number that sounds like a whole lifetime." Fans are shocked because in their heads, beating the biggest count was supposed to mean the storm was over, or at least quieter. But the talk online says it only changed the weather, because now everything is about sentencing, and sentencing is where things can turn cold and calculated fast. You started seeing posts from court watchers and commentary pages saying the government was pushing hard, not just pushing for time, but pushing a message. And when people feel like a message is being sent, they stop treating it like one person's case and start treating it like a warning to everybody watching.
That is why the reactions got so intense. It wasn't only what happens to him, it was what this means for artists like him. And suddenly, everyone had an opinion, even people who never cared before. Then came the rumor that set the whole thing off again. The idea that his own reaction after the verdict, the stuff that supposedly popped up online, was being used to paint him as someone who didn't learn anything. And whether you believe it or not, that story made people argue like their pride was on trial too. Because some fans looked at it like confidence, others looked at it like self-sabotage. And that split is where the drama started spilling into his circle. A popular blog claims somebody close to him was furious. Another page insisted the family was trying to keep things calm, but everyone around them kept feeding the fire. And you know how it goes when the internet senses tension behind the scenes. They start assigning roles like it's a cast list. They start saying, this one is the loyal one, that one is the bad influence, this one is cloud chasing, that one is the real support. And when people do that, it turns real relationships into storylines. The loudest whispers were about who had his ear the most. One account said his manager was telling him, stay off your phone, let the lawyers talk. Another said there was a friend in the background saying, nah, don't let them control you, the fans need to hear you. And right there you have the perfect recipe for a blow-up. Because when emotions ran high, advice turns into pressure, and pressure turns into arguments. In one version floating around, a family member called him and the first thing they said was, why are you making it harder? And he allegedly responded with something like, I'm not scared, I'm not bowing. And the family member snapped back, this isn't about scared, this is about smart. Now again, we are repeating what is being claimed online, not confirming private calls, but people are sharing it like it is real, and it is shaping the way the audience feels. And the audience feeling matters, because in cases like this, the public becomes a second jury. And that second jury doesn't have rules. They don't have to be fair. They don't have to wait for facts. They decide in seconds and then defend their decision like it's personal. That is why his supporters started moving like a team. They began pushing a new narrative, that he was being punished for his image, not just the charges. They were saying they couldn't get him on the biggest thing, so now they're trying to stack years to make it look the same. And to them, that felt like a betrayal by the system. But on the other side, critics were saying, stop acting like he's being targeted for nothing. There are still convictions. You can't ignore that. And once both sides dig in, nobody is trying to understand anymore. Then you had the friends of friends getting involved, the ones who always show up when a name is trending. One random voice pops up on a live stream saying, I knew this would happen. Someone else replies, you don't know nothing, you just talking. And now you have a messy public argument where people are accusing each other of using the moment for views. Because in this space, even support can look like strategy, and even silence can look suspicious. And the family was left divided in the eyes of the public, even if they were trying to stay united privately. Because fans started reading everything like a clue. If someone didn't post, people said they were mad. If someone posted too much, people said they were chasing attention. If someone posted a vague message like keep faith, people said it meant there was bad news. The internet turned every little thing into a headline. Somebody even claimed there was a meeting behind the scenes, like a crisis meeting, where the lawyers in the inner circle were trying to get everybody on the same page. The alleged goal was simple: stop the leaks, stop the reckless talk, stop the back and forth online, and focus on the date that matters. Because the date kept coming up in reports, and fans kept calling it the day everything gets decided. That kind of language makes people panic because it turns a legal process into a countdown. And in the middle of that panic, the betrayal storyline started growing. Certain pages claimed that someone who used to be close had quietly switched sides, not in a dramatic movie way, but in a subtle way. Like they stopped defending him, stopped answering calls, started keeping distance. And people online took that as proof there was a crack.
Circle. One fan wrote, watch who disappears when it gets hard. Another replied, you don't know these people. And someone else jumped in, nah, I seen this before. When money and pressure hit, the fake support falls off. Then a new rumor dropped that made it even uglier, that the prosecutors were leaning heavily on cooperators and insiders to frame certain events as part of a bigger pattern. And that rumor made fans furious because they hate the idea of insiders talking. But it also made them suspicious because once that word is out there, people start looking at everyone around him like they might be the one. And that kind of suspicion can poison a circle fast. One blog posted a dramatic line like, the streets are watching. And even though that sounds like a tagline, it made emotions ran high because now it felt like people were trying to turn the case into a loyalty test. And that is the kind of pressure that makes families argue and friends fall out. Because one person says, stop talking like that, this is real life. Another person says, you can't tell people how to react. And next thing you know, you have people yelling in group chats, blaming each other for the headlines. A claimed screenshot made rounds where someone in the circle supposedly wrote, you're feeding them ammo. And another person responded, no, you're just scared of the truth. And even if that screenshot is fake, it spread because it matched the vibe of what people already believed, that the biggest enemy in a high-profile case is not only the charges, it is the chaos around the person. And while all of this is going on, the fans are doing what fans do when they feel powerless. They start organizing, they start trending phrases, they start posting old moments to remind everyone that he was once just a kid chasing music. They start saying, don't forget how fast he came up. And they start blaming anyone they can name: labels, blogs, former friends, anyone who looks like they benefited while he fell. But there was one detail that made even supporters pause, because it came up again and again in commentary. The idea that the court does not only look at what happened, it looks at how you carry yourself after. And if it is true that prosecutors are highlighting his online behavior, then every post becomes a piece of the puzzle. That is why people started saying the real battle now is discipline. Can he stay quiet? Can his circle stop talking? Can the leaks stop? Can the narrative stop being a mess? And that is where the tension got personal, because a fan can argue all day, but a family has to live with the outcome. A supporter can tweet and log off, but the people close to him have to wake up to the same fear every morning. And the rumor mill says some family members were begging the circle to stop acting like this is entertainment, because for them it is not. For them it is years, it is decades, it is time you cannot get back. And yet the internet does not slow down for feelings. It keeps spinning, it keeps demanding drama, it keeps rewarding the loudest voices. And as the conversation kept getting hotter, one thing became obvious. The more people argued about the rumored 50 years, the more it started to feel real in their minds, like a shadow hanging over everything. And when that shadow settles in, even small moments feel heavy, even jokes feel bitter, even victories feel temporary, because everyone is bracing for the next headline that could flip the mood again overnight. The next headline that could flip the mood again overnight was not even a new court filing. It was the way the story started getting rewritten by the people watching. Because once the number 50 years started circulating, the conversation stopped sounding like regular updates and started sounding like a countdown show, where every day people wake up and ask, did anything drop yet? And that is where the real tension lives, in the waiting. According to the posts spreading around, supporters were no longer celebrating like it was finished. They were bracing, like something heavier was still coming. You could feel it in how the tone changed. Less victory laps, more defensive explanations. Less he beat it, more they're still trying to cook him. Fans are shocked because it feels like the outcome is being argued twice, once in court and once on the timeline. The wild part is how quickly people turned a legal process into a personal storyline. One clip gets reposted with dramatic music and a caption like, he didn't fold. Another clip gets reposted right after with a caption like, this is why they'll throw the book. And then the comments become a boxing ring. One person says, y'all love seeing a young man lose his life. Another snaps back, y'all love excuses. Somebody else tries to calm it down, nobody knows what's coming. But the replies keep piling on, like the timeline is addicted to picking a side before anything is final. And the post-controversy became the center of everything. Not because everyone saw it the same way, but because everyone projected onto it. Some people framed it like pride, like he was trying to keep his chin up after years of pressure. Others framed it like a mistake, like giving the other side an easy talking point. And a third group treated it like a moral test, saying, this is exactly why they're pushing for the maximum. Supporters hated that, because to them it sounded like people were praying for the worst and calling it justice. Late that night, a few commentary lives started popping up, and the energy was pure chaos. One host kept repeating, allegedly, allegedly, like a shield, while still leaning into every rumor. Another host tried to sound balanced, saying, we can talk about what's being reported without acting like we were in the room. Then a caller jumped in and said, nah, they want to make an example. And the host replied, prove it. The caller shot back, I don't have to prove what I can feel. That exchange went viral because it summed up the whole moment. The facts are one thing, but the emotions are driving the car. Then another twist hit, not from court, but from the culture. People started asking, where are the industry voices now? Where are the bigger artists who shouted him out when he was buzzing? Where are the statements? And that question matters because silence is loud online. If a famous name does not speak, fans treat it like betrayal. If a famous name speaks, critics call it performative. So either way, somebody gets dragged. And just like that, you had a new wave of loyalty debates. A fan account posted, they loved him when the numbers were up. A critic replied, they can't defend a case. Then a commentator voice cut in, this is what happens when street fame and fame collide. That comment lit a fuse, because now it wasn't only about K-Flock, it was about who profits from the image and who disappears when consequences show up. Some supporters began building their own counterstory, almost like they were trying to protect him with narrative armor. They kept repeating a few points. They said the top count was beaten, so there was doubt about the worst allegation. They said the rest is being framed in a way that turns music and posts into motive. And they said the number being pushed feels like punishment for the whole image, not just the charges. Again, that's what fans are saying online, not a final ruling. But the harshest twist was the realization that recommendation does not mean decision, and uncertainty is the scariest part. Because when people hear a big number, they assume it's locked. Then someone corrects them, it's a recommendation. Then another replies, recommendation or not, they're pushing it for a reason.
And the fear comes back, because in the public imagination, the reason becomes personal. People start saying they want to make an example. And once that phrase lands, every
rumor feels like another brick on the same wall. The comment sections turned into therapy sessions and war rooms at the same time. One fan wrote, "I can't even listen to the songs the same now." Another replied, "That's real. This is bigger than music." And then someone else jumped in with the opposite energy. "Stop crying, he chose this." Those 3 sentences explain why the family was left divided in the public eye. Not because anybody actually knows what the family is saying, but because the audience is splitting into comfort and punishment, mercy and judgment, empathy and anger. And because the internet can't sit still, people started building theories about what the judge might do, like they were predicting the finale. He'll show mercy, he'll go hard, he'll split the difference. Each theory came with a fight in the replies. One person wrote, "If it goes the wrong way, don't ask us to be quiet." Another replied, "Be quiet now and be smart later." Then a third voice cut through, "Y'all arguing like your comments decided." And the reply came instantly, "Sometimes comments decide how people remember it." In the quieter corners, you saw a different kind of conversation. People started talking about time like it was a physical thing. They talked about missing birthdays, missing seasons, watching the world move on without you. They talked about a mother having to stay strong on camera and falling apart off camera, not as a confirmed detail, but as a familiar fear that people project onto any family in a public storm. Those comments were not flashy, but they were heavy because they made the stakes feel real for people who originally clicked just for the headline. And right when the mood was settling into that heaviness, the cycle kicked again because another viral post popped up claiming new details and inside notes. Some people shared it instantly. Others pushed back. Where's the source? And that pushback matters because it shows the audience is getting tired of being played. They still want drama, but they also want something solid, something that doesn't fall apart the next morning. By the end of the day, the timeline looked like 2 parallel worlds. One world was memes, captions, and hot takes. The other world was fear, prayers, and quiet messages that read like someone trying not to fall apart. And somewhere between those worlds is K-Flock's name, being pulled back and forth like a rope, while the only thing everyone agrees on is that the next official update will not just change the numbers, it will change the mood all over again. And that next official update became the obsession, because once the public realized nothing was final yet, everyone started acting like the story was a live wire. One small spark, one leaked line, one fresh rumor, and the whole timeline would light up again. And in the middle of it, you had a strange kind of pressure that only happens when a person becomes bigger than their own name. K-Flock was no longer being discussed like a human being in a complicated legal situation. He was being discussed like a symbol, and symbols get pulled apart by everybody who wants to prove a point. People started talking about the case like it had 2 versions, the courtroom version and the internet version. In the courtroom version, things move slow, measured, paper by paper, argument by argument. In the internet version, everything moves at the speed of emotion. A single screenshot can feel like a verdict, a short clip can feel like a confession, and a rumor can become truth before the day even ends. That is why the alleged sentencing push became the headline that refused to die. Because once a big number enters the conversation, it changes how people feel about everything else. Supporters started saying the system was trying to take the victory away. Critics started saying the remaining convictions were being ignored. And then the middle group, the people who were not fully on either side, started saying something different. This is the part where public behavior matters, because every reaction becomes a lens that others use to judge you. And that is where the tension in his circle, real or rumored, started sounding believable to people, because you could almost picture the arguments without needing proof. Someone in the circle saying, "You have to stay calm." Someone else saying, "You can't let them play with you." A family member saying, "Please stop making this louder." A friend saying, "The fans want to hear you." It's the kind of pressure that can turn love into frustration fast, not because people want drama, but because fear makes everybody speak sharper than they mean to. The online chatter kept claiming there were 2 different mindsets fighting around him. One mindset was survival, protect the case, protect the image, protect the future. The other mindset was pride, never look shaken, never look controlled, never look like you were begging. And when those 2 mindsets clash, it doesn't matter how loyal people are, somebody will end up feeling disrespected. Fans are shocked because they can sense that clash in the way the story is being told. Even without direct access, they read tone, they read timing, they read who shows up and who stays quiet. And the silence became its own character. Certain people who used to be loud were suddenly quiet, and the internet took that personally. They started saying, "Where are the ones who benefited?" They started naming every person who ever stood next to him in a photo. They started acting like absence was a statement, and that is why the betrayal theme got fed, because once the audience believes betrayal is happening, they start hunting for it everywhere.
One of the ugliest twists in the online narrative was how fast people started accusing strangers of being the reason things went wrong. You had fans pointing at bloggers saying they were poisoning the story. You had bloggers pointing at fans saying they were spreading misinformation. You had random accounts claiming inside sources and getting attention for it. And you had people in the comments begging everybody to stop because they felt like the noise was turning a serious situation into entertainment. But the truth is, the internet rewards entertainment. That's why the most dramatic takes rose to the top, even when they were full of holes. The judge is furious. The system wants revenge. They're making him an example. Those phrases spread because they feel powerful, not because they are proven. And once phrases like that spread, they become emotional facts to the audience. People stop saying maybe and start saying this is what's happening, even when they cannot point to anything official. And then came the conversations about the past, because when the present feels uncertain, people dig into history like it can explain the ending. They started reposting early career moments, old lines from songs, old clips from interviews, anything that makes the rise feel real again. Because if the rise feels real, then the fall feels tragic, and tragedy is what makes people stay locked in. Some fans wrote long messages like they were talking directly to him, even though he'll likely never see them. Learn from this, stay focused, your talent is bigger than this. Those comments had a different energy than the loud ones. They weren't trying to win an argument, they were trying to reach a person through a screen. And that is the part that makes the whole story feel heavier, because even in a sensational headline cycle, there are people who feel real sadness about what they think might happen. And while supporters were posting prayers and encouragement, critics were posting reminders that the case involves serious accusations and real consequences. They kept bringing up the idea that there was a family on the other side of the tragedy, a loss that cannot be reversed. And that made the comment sections
even more intense because one side felt like empathy for him was being treated as disrespect to others, while the other side felt like sympathy was being used to erase accountability. The family was left divided in the eyes of the public because nobody could agree on what care is supposed to look like in a situation like this. Then you had the commentators who tried to sit in the middle, and honestly, they took the most heat. They would say, we can talk about what's being reported without pretending we know everything, and both sides would attack them. Supporters would call them sneaky, critics would call them soft. And the reason that happens is simple. When emotions ran high, people do not want balance, they want validation. The most repeated line across the whole cycle was some version of, "This is crazy," not because anyone could prove every detail, but because the contrast is so dramatic. The idea that someone can beat the biggest count and still face a mountain of time feels like a twist you would expect in scripted drama. That is why people cannot stop talking about it. It feels unfair to one side, and it feels inevitable to the other. And because it feels like a twist, everyone wants to be the one who predicted it first. As the days rolled on, the rumor machine kept trying to manufacture new shocks. Someone would claim a secret statement existed. Someone would claim there was tension with a former friend. Someone would claim the defense had a surprise plan. Then another account would call it fake. Then someone else would repost it anyway because it was spicy. And that is the cycle. Denial, repost, debate, repeat. It is exhausting, but it is addictive because every refresh feels like it might deliver the next big update. And yet beneath all that noise, the most consistent theme was fear. Fear of losing years, fear of being defined by one period of life forever, fear of the world moving on while you are stuck. That fear is what makes people act irrational. It makes fans lash out, it makes critics go harder, it makes circles fracture, it makes silence look suspicious and speech look reckless. It turns every moment into a test. Eventually, a calmer tone started showing up in some corners, like the audience was tiring itself out. You began seeing people say, "Let's wait for official word." You saw people reminding others that online takes do not change outcomes. You saw people posting less heat and more reflection. Not everyone, of course. The loud voices stayed loud, but the shift was noticeable. And by the time the day ended, the story had settled into a strange pause, where both sides were still angry, but the energy felt more focused. People were no longer just reacting to rumors for sport. They were reacting because they felt invested. And that investment, whether it comes from support or criticism, is what keeps the spotlight burning. So the situation sits in that tense space where everything feels like it matters. The verdict that sparked celebration, the rumored sentencing push that sparked panic, the online behavior that sparked debate, the circle that sparked suspicion, and the audience that keeps pulling the narrative in different directions. No matter what anyone believes, the one thing everybody seems to agree on is this: the outcome will not just shape a number on paper, it will shape how this whole era is remembered. And that memory battle is already happening right now. So that is where the story sits right now, with one side saying the biggest count being beaten should have changed everything, and the other side saying the remaining convictions are still heavy enough to change a life no matter what the headline looks like.
And because so much of this is being discussed through reports, commentary, and what people are claiming online, the biggest question is still hanging in the air. Is this going to end up being seen as a rare second chance that got complicated, or the moment the system decided to send the harshest message possible? Fans are shocked because the emotions around this case have turned into a full storm. One minute you see celebration, the next minute you see fear. One minute you see people posting support like a rally, the next minute you see people arguing about whether a single reaction made everything worse. And the family was left divided in the public eye. Not necessarily because anyone knows what's happening behind closed doors, but because the audience itself is split into camps, each one convinced their view is the only honest one. And now you tell me, what do you think is really going on here? Do you think people are overreacting to what's being reported? Or do you think the reports hint at something bigger about how these cases play out? Do you think social media reactions should matter in how someone is judged? Or should the court only focus on what happened in the case itself? And if the number being talked about is even close to real, do you see it as justice? Or do you see it as the system trying to make an example? Drop your opinion in the comments because I want to know where you stand. And I know this comment section is going to be heated. If you watched all the way through, hit the like button so this video reaches more people following the story. Subscribe right now if you want updates the moment anything new is reported, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next twist. And share this video with a friend who has been arguing about this online, because I promise you their reaction is going to tell you everything.